Imagine a king so desperate for control, so consumed by lust, paranoia, and obsession that he ripped apart a religion, executed wives, and left behind a trail of blood and broken bodies. That king was Henry VIII. Behind the portraits of a fat, jeweled monarch, behind the legend of the man with 6 wives, lies a story that is far more horrifying than anything the schoolbooks ever dared to tell you. Because when you step inside Henry's bedchamber, you step into a world ruled not by love, but by fear, blood, and a sexual obsession that warped the course of history forever. I'm your host, Cloaked Testament, and this is the Time-Worn Record, where we deep dive into the most mysterious corners of history, unveiling the truths or myths that have been hidden or forgotten. What could possibly be hidden behind the curtain today? From the beginning, Henry's entire identity was chained to one thing: his virility. In the 16th century, kings were not judged by compassion or wisdom, but by their ability to produce sons. Every childless night, every failed pregnancy, was not just a private disappointment. It was a national crisis. Henry knew that his power, his legacy, and his masculinity itself would be questioned if he could not flood the kingdom with heirs. And so he grew obsessed, not just with sex, but with the idea of sex as proof of his strength, as proof of his divine right to rule. Yet beneath the swagger and the jousts, beneath the endless feasts and displays of power, Henry carried a gnawing terror. What if he couldn't? What if the most powerful man in England was failing at the most basic duty of a king? His first queen, Catherine of Aragon, bore the brunt of this obsession. She endured pregnancy after pregnancy, most ending in stillbirths, miscarriages, or infants who died within weeks. Imagine the dread of that bedchamber, where each time Catherine carried a child, she knew she was carrying Henry's hopes, his fury, and the future of a dynasty. And each time the child died, Catherine felt the weight of Henry's disappointment crushing down on her. Whispers spread in court corridors. Was Henry's seed spoiled? Was Catherine cursed? Was God himself condemning their marriage? For Catherine, there was no escape. Henry demanded endless attempts, relentless bedding, while she endured the agony of loss over and over again. And when she could not give him the son he craved, Henry's obsession broke not just his marriage, but the entire religious structure of Europe. He ripped England away from the Pope. He split the church in two. He declared himself supreme head of a new religion, all because of the haunted silence of a royal cradle. But Catherine's failure only made Henry hungrier. His eyes fell on Anne Boleyn, and what began as lust spiraled into obsession. He sent her desperate letters, filled with passion and need, begging her to yield herself. But Anne refused to be his mistress. If Henry wanted her, he would have to make her queen. And for Anne, that resistance was dangerous. Henry became a lovesick king, unable to eat or sleep, burning with desire that transformed into a dangerous fixation. Years passed while Henry schemed and fought, driven by a hunger for Anne that the world could see. England waited, Rome raged, and all because one man could not bear to be denied. When Anne finally gave in, she too became a prisoner of Henry's obsession. He promised her the world, but the world quickly soured. Anne gave him a daughter, not a son. And Henry, who had shattered kingdoms to possess her, began to despise her. Lust turned to paranoia, passion to revulsion. Whispers spread that Anne bewitched him, that she had tricked him into love, that her very body was cursed. Henry's mind twisted every disappointment into treason. Soon he accused her of the unthinkable adultery, incest, witchcraft. Imagine the horror: a queen dragged from her chambers, accused of sleeping with her own brother, forced to face a sham trial, while the man who once worshipped her signed her death warrant. In May of 1536, the sword fell. Anne's head rolled. Henry's obsession had devoured her whole. But Anne was not the last. Henry's bed became a place of dread for every woman forced into it. Jane Seymour gave him the son he so desperately wanted, but died days later from childbirth complications. Henry grieved her, yes, but also celebrated at last, proving his virility to the world. Anne of Cleves, his next bride, he humiliated. He mocked her body on their wedding night, declared her repulsive, and tossed her aside like spoiled meat. And then came Catherine Howard, barely a teenager, thrown into the arms of a man nearly 50. She could never satisfy him, not in body, not in loyalty. When Henry discovered her past romances, he raged like a wounded beast, and once again the axe was raised. Catherine Howard's young head was struck from her shoulders, the price for failing the king in bed. By the time he reached his final wife, Catherine Parr, even she knew the danger. To share Henry's chamber was to risk death, but beneath all this terror lay a secret truth: Henry himself was failing. By his later years, he was not the mighty lover he pretended to be. He was obese, crippled by ulcers that leaked pus down his legs, his body bloated and rotting. His breath stank, his skin oozed. The once vigorous king was a decaying shell, yet still he demanded the image of the virile bull. He ordered that his bedchamber duties be spoken of as if he were tireless. But the whispers at court told a different story. Rumors swirled of impotence, of nights when Henry could not perform, of wives left unsatisfied and terrified. Some said he turned to potions and charms, desperate to restore his power. Others claimed he forced his young brides into acts that horrified them, demanding submission not out of desire but out of rage. And through it all, the shadow of syphilis loomed. Many believed Henry carried the disease, his body and mind crumbling from its effects, his paranoia, his cruelty, his sexual dysfunction, all symptoms of infection. Whether true or not, the stench of disease clung to him, and the more his body failed, the more violently he lashed out at the women trapped in his orbit. Sex, for Henry, was never just about pleasure. It was about control. Each conquest was proof of dominance. Each failed pregnancy, a betrayal. His wives were pawns in a game, where their bodies were measured only by the sons they could deliver, and when they failed, they paid in blood. In Henry's bed, love was irrelevant. Fear ruled. To enter it was to gamble with your life. One day you were queen. The next, you were a traitor. The canopy above the royal bed might have been lined with silk and gold, but underneath it lay terror, humiliation, and death. Henry VIII is remembered for his 6 wives, for his glittering court, for creating the Church of England. But beneath that legacy lies a darker truth. He was a man who allowed his sexual obsession to shape the destiny of a nation. He left behind a kingdom scarred by violence, a religion ripped apart, and a trail of women whose lives were ruined, cut short or destroyed by his lust and paranoia. The most terrifying part? This wasn't just one man's private life. His obsessions changed the world. When the most powerful man in the land is ruled not by wisdom, but by desire, the bedchamber becomes a battlefield. And Henry VIII was its most ruthless, most terrifying soldier.